This free program is paid for by the listeners of WBAI New York. If you're not already a member, think about joining us to help keep free speech alive.
Okay, welcome back to Asia Pacific Forum. We were hearing a bit of a track from the group Kash. That's Samita Sinha and Sunny Jain and some other folks we've had on before. And now we're going to talk to an artist whose name is Mohammed Ali. He's also been known as the tag Aerosol Arabic. He's from Birmingham, England, and he is pioneering a fusion of graffiti and Islamic art. He connects graffiti and Arabic calligraphy in vibrantly hued, spray-painted images with a root connection, the written word. And now Ali's here in the United States. It's his first tour of the States, I think, a four-city tour, Arts and Islam tour. He's here in New York City, and he's in the studio with us, and we're really pleased to have him. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
You know, I guess folks here in the United States are just now getting to know your work, so maybe we should start by, talking in some detail about some of your work. Can you describe some of the artwork you've been making and what calligraphy is?
Okay. Well, me being kind of born and raised in the UK, just like a lot of the young people here in the USA, being inspired by urban street graffiti art. Likewise, from the very early days, since the early 80s. I've been, inspired by this graffiti movement, and like a lot of my friends and a lot of people in the UK, from the very early days, we've been inspired by this, and there's a huge graffiti art scene in the UK and the rest of Europe, of course. So ever since those days, I've been practicing graffiti art legally, of course, and doing commissions and whatever and everything. It's just a huge inspiration, a big part of my life. But it was probably more in recent days, maybe 7, 8 years ago, where my kind of newfound passion being the rediscovery of my faith as a Muslim and my belief in Islam, where I started to kind of fuse the two elements. When I rediscovered my faith and discovered this rich kind of hidden kind of creative heritage that exists, the architecture and calligraphy, the written word. This for me as a graffiti artist was a huge inspiration, because already I had this kind of obsession with the kind of the script-based art form. So discovering Islamic calligraphy, for me, it just made perfect sense. It's like a logical progression for me to fuse the two and kind of explore my identity as a British-born Muslim.
Well, for example, describe, you did this mural, Remembrance mural.
Yeah.
Right. What does it look like? Can you describe that for folks?
Yeah, it says the word dhikr, which translates as remembrance. So I often write it in the Arabic script, but usually I'll have the kind of translation to kind of keep it inclusive and something that everybody can appreciate. But in this mural, for example, we have it was done in Birmingham, so it has kind of the Birmingham skyline buildings, and we'll have a mosque, the kind of a Birmingham mosque, and a well-known church in Birmingham. So this piece, is kind of representing, the concept of remembrance being something which is, universal to people of all faith, and the kind of iconic buildings, representative of different faith, showing the unity of the different faith communities. And that's my attempt to try and reach out to the community with a kind of a spiritual message, but not aimed at any certain community, but rather, encompassing everybody.
Well, that was a recently commissioned mural. How was your artwork initially received in Birmingham, would you say?
Yeah, initially, I think the community of Birmingham, as well as, many other places, they're crying out for things like this. This is definitely a need for something like this, which is an attempt to try and counter this clash of civilizations we may hear about, about the Islamic faith versus the Western world, or these kind of notions that exist. Rather, my work, Aerosol Arabic, is, and even the word name itself, it kind of represents the fact that aerosol culture, the urban graffiti culture, and Arabic, this kind of spiritual connect, kind of style. In actual fact, there is no kind of, there's no conflict. There's no, they actually do fit together quite, harmoniously. And definitely, different communities here in the Bronx, in the UK, in Denmark. I've been traveling around, in different parts of the world, and the people have been, really crying out for it. And one journalist, in fact, it was Al Jazeera, they mentioned that it was the work that I'm doing is part of an Islamic art renaissance right here within the UK. So it's interesting that within the UK, that there's this kind of resurgence of kind of spiritual kind of creativity.
And you haven't experienced, I guess, let's say, pushback from folks who think that melding graffiti, hip-hop culture, and so on, and religious themes is pushing the boundaries? It's been, in the Muslim community, for example, what's the
within
reaction?
the Muslim community, I've never had any issues, because when I do interviews, and my work has become quite well known within the Muslim communities around the world, it's on the internet a lot, etc. I usually make myself interviews like this, even my opinions and my aims of my work is I really make it clearly transparent, so people know that this is something personal to me, and I'm not here to just kind of something that I don't feel passionate about. I'm just experimenting with something I don't feel for. Rather, this is a kind of expression of my own faith and identity, and there's no issues. This is something where I'm kind of reaching out to everybody, and I'm not in the business to go out to kind of cause controversy or insult anybody. Like, unfortunately, like maybe a lot of art that might exist today. I'm not in the business to do that. My work is about connecting communities, not trying to break bridges. It's more about building bridges than burning bridges.
Well, maybe one measure of the kind of, acceptance or understanding that people have shown towards your art is that we're also joined here in the studio by Hassan Mohammed Ali, who is with the Arts Council in Britain, right? And you're one of the sponsors of this tour, Arts in Islam. And I have to say, when we first heard that you were sponsoring that, we were kind of amazed that a government entity was getting behind this. I guess we just sort of think here, we see like hip-hop culture as kind of an insurgent art form and so forth, and it would be hard to imagine the government actually backing it, but that's what you're doing here. Talk a little bit about what you guys have been thinking.
Well, I'm glad you're surprised. That's a mark of success. I'll take that as a mark of success. Yeah, I'm a senior officer in the Arts Council. I work in diversity. My job really is to make sure that artists like Mohammed Ali get a fair hearing, that they get the kind of representation in terms of funding that everyone else gets. And that's not because, it's not for any motive other than, in one sense, is because people like Mohammed Ali are making good art.
Right.
They're making cutting edge art. And for me, as an artist myself, my model is Harlem, the Harlem Renaissance, actually, because I think the kind of art that was produced there is, I can see the kind of relationship between the art that's beginning to grow up within sort of Muslim and minority communities in England and with the Harlem Renaissance, and that is great American art. I think what Mohammed Ali is producing is great art based in England, based in Western culture, but coming at it from a different angle in terms of his artistic, cultural heritage. So, we're really pleased to be here. We're pleased to have sponsored this tour. I'm pleased to have been involved. I'm pleased to have been on a street corner in the Bronx today, watching Mohammed Ali, surrounded by young kids, putting up a mural in remembrance to the children from the Malian family who were burnt tragically in that fire, and to see him interacting. In one sense, I know it's a big argument, is art universal, but I can tell you what, Mohammed Ali today was connecting with the people in the Bronx. And for me, a member of the Arts Council England, I don't think there's any higher achievement, and there's no better investment for government money, which is public money after all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, how did you choose the sites, the 4 cities in your tour? I know it's co-sponsored with the Islamic Circle of North America, an organization whose reps in New York we've had on our show. How did you choose Bronx? How did you choose Chicago, New Jersey, Andover Academy?
Yes, in actual fact, it was the Phillips Academy in Andover that extended an invitation to me, and they said, we have a grant and we'd like to invite you to speak and do a demonstration. So it all started off from that. We were just inviting myself, and that kind of, became bigger and bigger. And once people heard we were coming, we had various invitations from Columbia University and different kind of, and ICNA as well getting involved, Islamic Circle of North America. And that's when Arts Council England, we thought we'd make it a wider program. Instead of making these kind of just small sporadic events, we thought we'll have an organised tour where we will go over, myself and the Arts Council, and we will go over to America and spread some of the good things that we're doing in the UK and around Europe as well when we're travelling, and informing people about art and Islam and the work that I do as well, informing people about these questions, the burning questions they might have. We hear about these Danish cartoon controversies and a lot of the ignorance that surrounds art and Islam. We hear about, is Islam anti-art? But we're here to kind of try and inform people, and inform them through an example of my work, as well as, the kind of historical context of the history of Islam, history of art in Islam, and Hassan's, presentations are amazing. And at the end of these seminars, people are really just firing out questions, and it's almost like the questions they were afraid to ask, they were asking them. We just put an open platform, and this is what we need. We need to open the doors to say, come and discuss, because we're not having this dialogue. And art is just, for me as an artist, the perfect means to kind of open up discussion, and really kind of heal the wounds within the societies and the communities around the world.
You're listening to Asia Pacific Forum on WBAI 99.5 FM in New York, and streaming live on the web at WBAI.org. And we're talking to Mohammed Ali and Hassan Mohammed Ali about the Arts and Islam tour that they're conducting in the United States, bringing Aerosol Arabic, the tag that Mohammed Ali is also known as, to the States, and talking about both the melding of hip-hop and Islam and the Muslim culture and contemporary British and U.S. culture. And, well, guys, this show, Asia Pacific Forum, is devoted to community news and politics and culture in the Asian American communities. And one thing that I've been thinking a lot about as both Sukhdev Sandhu was on and then you guys are on, is how incredibly rich and vibrant the South Asian culture seems to be, right, in the UK, and how since 9/11, at least here, South Asian and Muslim communities have both been emerging and also under tremendous political pressure from the kind of crackdown that's happened. So has the entire immigrant communities here, as people talk about cracking down on immigrants. I mean, what is you've been here now for a little while and interacting. How do you compare the two different scenes and worlds?
It's difficult for us to generalise, and we're in a country that we don't really know. We've only been here a few days, so I wouldn't want us to make authoritative statements on parallels and issues. But from what you're saying, I think the same kind of contradiction exists. And in one sense, I think that's where the creativity lies. I mean, I guess it's a strange thing to say, but that combination of resistance in one sense, and assertion in one sense, which Sukhdev was talking about, and then a large hostility, not necessarily from the general population in the UK, but from the powers that be, as it were, in terms of crackdown on Muslims in British society, which is undoubtedly going on.
Right.
The kind of contradiction, there's a kind of creativity welling up from that. That's not to say that all artists from Muslim backgrounds are political in an overt sense, but I sense that kind of vice that artists are in,
right,
is creating a very, very rich, urgent stream of artistic expression. There is a welling up of young Muslim artists in the UK. We're in the Arts Council. We're trying to do our best to develop and help them, because, to be honest, what they're saying, what they're trying to say, what they're struggling with, are the central questions in our society. They're the central questions this side of the Atlantic and our side of the Atlantic. And to be honest, there's nothing more important than those questions being explored, as Mohammed says, providing a platform for some of those deep, deep questions which our politicians can't seem to come to grips with in one sense, and our societies can't even seem quite to contemplate and understand what's going on around us. Artists, I think, are in the vanguard of trying to understand, and that's critical. I think that we give those artists support.
Well, if artists like Muhammad Ali are in the vanguard of exploring some of these issues, I mean, this is very touchy ground, and that's something that you guys have already experienced here in the U.S., right? In Chicago, you were working on a mural. Somebody called in and anonymously complained about it, and I mean, they seem to have misunderstood what you were trying to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? You know, this is what we came here to do, to try and inform people and deal with the ignorance. And the first thing that happens is that, you know, that someone complains, and I did 10% of the mural. It was a huge mural. You know, it was a great, we had a vibrant community there. We had the Mexicans, we had the Muslims, everybody was there appreciating it. And we have this complaint come through, and it was just ruined, everybody's face just dropped. You know, the young people, I could see firsthand. You know, we hear about young people becoming disillusioned. And I thought to myself, these guys, they felt they were here doing this message of peace and unity, which showed the kind of the unity of the different faith. There's this Chicago skyline, and it's a church, and there was a mosque. You know, this was the plan, and it said peace. And to be halted and stopped on that.
Well, what was the specific complaint? How did they misunderstand what you were doing in the mural?
The misunderstanding was that the word that was written in Arabic says salam, which means peace, right? And somehow or other they managed to see the two letters, lam and alif, which is like a letter L. Yeah, salam, the middle letter. It's kind of diagonal, two diagonal lines, and they somehow saw that the toppling of the World Trade Center in those letters, which was completely, I mean, to be honest with you, if I hadn't told you, you would probably say, yeah, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But the fact is, it was like a rough outline on the wall. They had no, you know, they could have easily have come and, you know, spoke to us about it, but no. Instead, these guys, they'd made the report. You know, we know exactly who they were, and they'd made this complaint. And I even made an attempt to go reach out to these guys and say to them, guys, I've come here to speak to you and discuss with you openly, you know, and let's have some dialogue. This is what I'm doing. This is about peace and unity, which is what we need. And response from these guys is, we lost this many people in the September the 11th, right? This is how many people we lost, and we have to see this every day, even after giving the explanation. So it just goes to show some people, their hearts are closed, their ears are closed, they don't want to know. They don't want that dialogue almost. For me, that is not going to deter me whatsoever. I'm coming back to finish that wall. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to make it bigger and better than the original one, right? Definitely. Yeah, because this encourages me to go further with what I do. You know, life is a struggle, you know, and everything's easy. And what that happened, that was a trial for me, a test, and it proved to me that I definitely need to be coming back to America and doing more of these things.
Well, it looks like we'll be able to follow your journey online. You've been blogging ever since you touched down. You know, for our listeners, you really have to see his work visually in order to fully appreciate how you fuse the calligraphy into your artworks. Do we have time for one last question?
Okay, one last quick question.
So, what do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself taking your art after the U.S.? This is your first visit. How will it impact when you go back to the UK and continue your projects?
I think these tours that I'm doing alongside the Arts Council's support, you know, we want to take this far and wide, you know, to different communities all over the world. And, you know, there's issues everywhere you go. You go to Sydney, Australia, you go to Denmark, you know, you go to Paris. Everyone has these similar issues when we have these issues of multiculturalism and the debate about multiculturalism and is it working or not. So no doubt about it, using art, in my opinion, one of the most powerful tools of reaching out to people, taking this and informing people traveling around with it and collaborating as well. You know, since I've been here in New York, it's been beautiful. I met some great people in Chicago as well. You know, I met a Mexican artist who was a strong Christian, and some of his work, you know, has some kind of Christian kind of issue, you know, like kind of images in his work. You know, and connecting, working with people like that. Here in New York, you know, I met some great people. Christy Zabon, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's, you know, hip-hop publicist. You know, she's great, you know, and only this evening I met a chap, Charm, you know, who's a DJ and graffiti artist. Well-known guys who I want to connect with and most definitely have kind of ongoing relationships, collaborations, working with like-minded people You know, most definitely that's the issue. Working with like-minded people to achieve this kind of the same goal is to create a better society and try and rid the societies of these issues that exist.
Well, we've been talking to Muhammad Ali and Hassan Muhammad Ali about the Arts in Islam tour. They're on right now. You can find out more about that at our website at asiapacificforum.org. Thanks so much for coming in, guys.
Thank you.
And let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to some saucy women.
Please remember that this program is supported by the listener members of WBAI New York. If you like what you hear, please consider becoming a member of WBAI or renewing if you've already joined. Basic membership is $25.